Welcome back to another lesson of Microsoft Excel. In this lesson, we are going to learn about all the logical functions there is, or let's say all the essential logical functions we can learn in Microsoft Excel. Well, there are basically four. There are three, but we also added in another one, which is also quite helpful in essentials. Okay. Now, the first logical function which we're going to start off with is going to be our AND function. So what is our AND function? Well, in this lesson, we are also going to describe what that function is and how that works. So the AND function is a pre-made function in Excel, which returns true or false based on two or more conditions. It is typed equal and takes two or more conditions. The AND function is often used together with the if function. Okay, so let's start off on how we can use our AND function and how do we get our result. So let's start it off. So here, what we're going to do is going to be clicking on our result. Here I'm going to type in equal, and then we're going to start off by typing in AND. Just like I said, it's going to give us the result according to what type of data we put in. So I'm going to do is first off increase this specific value. Okay, I'm going to do is cut this off. So I'm going to click on it, equal, and we're going to start off with our logical function. Now, first off is going to be our this value, which is A2. In A2, we're going to type in equal, and then here what we're going to do is type in our specific value, which is going to be Andrew. Okay, type in double quotation and put in your specific name. And make sure to put in the specific keyword and the specific case because it is case sensitive. Close out the double quotation, put in a comma, and then we're going to start off adding in our value. Now I'm going to click on C, or let's say I'm going to click on B2, okay, which we have over here. Now on our this value, which is going to be B2, we're going to click on it and type in greater or equal. So I'm going to type in greater or equal. So let's say a specific value, so I'm going to type in 60. Okay. Now as I've typed in 60, I'm going to put in a comma. Let's say I'm going to go off to the next one, okay? So in the next one, which is a different value, I'm going to click on this, which it is right here. I'm going to do is, let's say instead of that value, I'm going to do is click on this one. This one will be, a bit better if we are using the specific value. Now, if it is greater or equal, we're going to do the same thing, greater or equal to 60. Hit on 60. And I'm going to do is B5, make sure to put in B3, okay, which we are using right now. B3, put in the specific value, which is going to be this one. Let's say, I'm going to do is first off, click on this value instead of that specific value over here. Type in equal. What I'm going to do is double quotation, put in this name. What I'm going to type in Andrew again. Double quotation, comma. And this value, if it is greater or equal to 60. And after you're done, close the parentheses, hit on enter, and you can see the value is false. It is greater, neither equal. You can see both of them are false because both of them are greater. Use this, you can see this is also false. Use the other ones, you can see all of them has turned into false because all of the values match up the exact criteria. Now let's say instead of 60, I'm going to do is reduce the number. Let's say I'm going to type in 30. 30. Put in 30 over here too. Hit on enter. You can still see the value is false over here. Now let's say what if we put in 100? Do the same thing over here. You can still see the value has given us a false value because all of them are correct. If it wasn't correct, it wouldn't give us the exact answer. Now when I click on it, let's say I'm going to go over here. Instead of this value, I'm going to do is type in Stephen, and here I'm going to put in Jacob. You can still see this is false because one of them is still true, or let's say two of them is still true. Okay, so now you know how this AND function works in Microsoft Excel. Now, let's go off to our next function, which is going to be our R function. Okay, how does the R function or the R logical function work in Microsoft Excel? And what is it? And how does it give us the exact value? Basically, the R function in Microsoft Excel is a pre-made function which returns true or false based on two or more conditions. It is typed R, and the function is often used together with the if function. So let's just try using our R function, and how does it give us the exact result or the results we need. Okay, so first off, we're going to start off typing in our specific function. So here, we're going to type in R. Okay, type in equal, just go off over here. I'm going to do is remove this. I'm going to type in equal, then I'm going to type in R. And R, we're going to put in our first logical function, which is going to be over here. Okay, so I'm going to take the specific cell, which is going to be our first subject. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. Okay, and after that, I'm going to put in, let's say if it is bigger or smaller, which is greater or lesser. Let's say if it is lesser or greater than 50, I'm going to type in 50. Then I'm going to put in a comma. And in D, or let's say C, I'm going to click on that too, or let's say this one. I'm going to try to see if it is greater or lesser than 90. I'm going to do is put it up. If it is greater or lesser than 90, close the parentheses, hit on enter, and that statement is true because both of the statements are true. But what if we put something over here? Let's say I'm going to type in if it's greater than 100. Hit on enter, and you can still see it is true because one of the value is still true. If both of them were false, let's just try both of them to be false. Okay, what I'm going to do is 100, and this one should be if it is greater or, okay, if it is greater, B2 is greater than 100. Let's type in 100. Okay, hit on enter, and you can see the value is false now. Why is it false? Because both of them are false. Even though if one of them was true, the answer would be true. Let's try again over here. Type in equal or hit on enter. Logical value. If it is greater, then let's say 50 or maybe, okay, let's just type in 50. Put in a comma, and the next logical function should be 89, right? So I'm going to do is open up, or let's say if it is greater than 80. You'll basically see the answer will be true because both of these conditions are true. But if two of them are false, it's going to give me a false result. But even though if I turn one of them into false and one stays true, it is still going to give me a true result. So let's just use the fill header. I'm going to press on Ctrl-Z to undo that process. Hit on enter. I'm going to use the fill header. And there we go. We have one false because both of them were false and one of them or two of them were true. Now let's go off to our next function, which is going to be our not function. And how does the not function work? This basically works as the opposite. Well, the not function reverses the value of its argument. One common use for the not function is to expand the usefulness of other functions that perform logical tests. As you can see that we have 1, 0, 2, nothing, true, false, true, 0, and all those. Now how are we going to use the false? Or let's say how are we going to use the not function? I'm going to type in equal, type in not, and use your logical values. Close the parentheses, hit on enter, and you can see one is false, one is true. Now, computer understands only two codes, or let's say in our language, there is only two values. One is 1 and the other one is 0. Well, 1 is termed to be true, or let's say open, and 0 is termed to be false, or let's say closed. So 1 is termed to be open, which is 1, and the opposite is false, while 0 is closed. It is termed to be true when we are using our not function. Let's try doing the same thing over here. Type in equal, and type in not, and use both of these values, close the parentheses, and you will see it is going to be true and false, okay? Or let's say false and true. Because there is no value over here, it turned out to be true, and as there is a value over here, it is turned to be false. Let's try the same thing over here. Well, what will basically happen is that it will just turn the polar opposite. Let's just type in equal, not, select them, close the parentheses, hit on enter, and you can see that it is just the polar opposite. And we're going to type the same thing, equal, not. Let's say I'm going to get this and it will give me a true value. You can see true. And if I type in equal, not, and select this, close the parentheses, hit on enter, it will give me something like this, a 0. Okay. Now we can do the same thing, equal, not, and select both the cells, Close the parentheses, hit on enter, and true false it is. Now we're going to use the fill header to get the results of the next one too. You can see false and true because this is going to be the false and this one is turned out to be true. But if we put in a value over here, let's say put in 1, and you will basically see the true will turn out to be false. You can see just like how it changed right now. Now let's go off to our XOR function. What is the XOR function? Okay, well basically it's the exclusive OR. When we are using OR function, just like this over here, or let's say just the OR is inclusive. And when we are using exclusive, which is XOR, it's a bit different. Well, it is also a pre-made function in Excel, which returns true or false based on 2 or more conditions. So this is a bit different. You can use 2 or even more functions just the way you want it to use. Now let's say I'm going to go off to this XOR panel. I'm going to type in equal and type in XOR. Now we're going to put in 3 logical functions over here on 3 logical values. Now we're going to start off with this first one. I'm going to try if it is greater than 60, comma. The next one if it is greater than 70, comma. And the third one is going to be this one if it is greater than 50. Close the parentheses, hit on enter, and you can see the value is true. Now let's try one of them to be false. Let's say if it is greater than 80, you can see one of them is false and all of them turns, or the end result is false. So if one value inside of it is false, it's going to turn into false, even though if 2 other values is true. Now let's use the same thing over here. Type in equal. We're going to use false on all and each and every one of them. Type in XOR. Let's I'm going to select on this. And I'm going to do is if it is greater than 10. Let's say I'm going to type in greater than 30, comma. Select this. Greater than 60. But the last one, if it is greater than 80. Okay. D3 is greater than 90. Let's just put in 90. Close the parentheses, hit on enter, and you can see the false value. Now let's try putting in 40, 50. Cut this off, put in 30. And still see false because one of the value is still false over here. Let's just type in 10. You can see now the value is true. Let's use the fill header to get the results of each and every one. And there we go. We have true on each and every one. But it also just turns out one value. So if it is, let's say I'm going to type in or change in the value 90. I'm going to change it to 40. And this one to be greater than 50. I'm going to select on this one. Let's say I'm going to do the 50 on each and every one. 50 and 50. You can see still it is true. And we're going to get the result of each and every one. And there we go. We have false on 2 sides, or the 2 ones, which is Omen and Mona. So now you know how you'll be able to use logical functions, or the basic logical functions in Microsoft Excel, which is AND, OR, NOT, and exclusive OR. Now let's move on to our next lesson of Microsoft Excel.